Welcome to another edition of Bison Break. I'm your host, Brendan Whitt. Very, very excited to be here with Samuel Puryear, the director of golf for Howard University. Thank you for making time, man. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
You guys have been in the news a lot lately for a lot of positive stuff, and we're going to get to all of that. But first, this is Bison Break, so we got to get a chance to know you a little bit more beyond just the sporting scope. Okay, so you're from North Carolina. You're from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
You got it.
I am from Raleigh, North Carolina. So that's yeah. So you already off to a good start with me. But I'm gonna put you in my seat real quick. So let's say you got an interview show or a late night talk show. Who was your first guest that you're gonna bring on to talk to?
My dad.
Nice. I like it. Did he introduce you to the game of golf?
He introduced me to the game of golf, and I'm excited to give my dad the credit as it relates to my acclamation and zest for wanting to be good at the game. But I think my first guest would have to be my dad. Matter of fact, I would even say put my parents up there first. That'd be my first I got co-guest.
Oh, that's a good answer right there. That's a very good answer. All right, number two, I met you from North Carolina. So were you a Carolina, UNC, or Duke guy, or were you a Wake Forest guy?
No, it's funny. It's always if any team like Carolina, Duke, State, if any of those schools played anybody outside of the state, I always pull for the home team for one of the North Carolina teams. But when I was coming through, NC State was really kind to minorities. I mean, obviously Valvano walking in the hall, and he recruited a lot of our players at the high school. And a lot of our best athletes, football and basketball, went to State. I was always a huge Carolina fan and hoop. I mean, I loved them hooping. And back in those days, even football, Coach Crum and all those guys were great. Duke they developed a good basketball team, but I mean, you respected the academics, but that is what it is. And I wasn't that much of a Wake fan. They didn't seem to really embrace a ton of local blacks. So I always loved their golf program, though. I mean, their golf program, I always strive to follow what they did in golf because they always had the Curtis Stranges and the Lanny Watkins, and Coach Haddock was an all-American coach. I mean, they had the best players in America. I'm telling you that, Billy Andre. So I always watched what they did and said, one day I want to be that good, be as good as. So in golf, I follow Wake. I didn't follow any of the other schools in golf. I only follow. But in other sports, I didn't follow Wake. I followed the other sports.
I think you're the first person from North Carolina I've heard that had so enjoyed this part of this program. That I'm appreciative and surprised at the diversity. That's surprising to me. You don't get a lot of that from
I was a sport freak. I mean, I could tell you who was on some of those teams. I mean, because I was an athlete too, so I played. Right. A lot of guys I played against played at a lot of schools that you're talking about. So yeah, I loved sports growing up.
Okay. North Carolina, beach or mountains? We got both. Were you a beach or a mountain guy?
That's cool. Yeah, I would say initially as a kid, I was always a beach guy. We used to go to Myrtle Beach all the time. But I always liked too, we would do a Myrtle Beach, and then all of a sudden we do a Tweetsie Railroad, up in the mountains, go up, boom. And then my parents had degrees from both. My dad had, he had a degree from Carolina, he had a degree from App, he had a degree from Winston State, had a degree from A&T. And my mom had some degrees from A&T and Winston State. So I was always in between. We lived close enough in Winston to the mountains where we could always go up and watch Appalachian State game. Wasn't too far, but I always loved the beach though. The beach was always pretty special.
Yeah, I'm a beach guy myself. All right, final one. You going to Bojangles? What's your order? What's your go-to Bojangles order?
Tell you what, it's real talk. I told my mom today. I said, man, you go to Bojangles. I always like the white meat. So I just give me one or two of the breasts and those fries. I don't eat the bread, so I don't eat the biscuits.
You don't eat the biscuits, man?
No, man. Don't eat the bread, and I don't drink the tea or the pop. But I definitely take chicken breast and the fries, hands down.
That's not a bad order. I was when I was putting these, I was like, man, I could definitely go for a chicken biscuit myself right this very second.
No question. Yeah, my parents today said they wanted to they got some Lowe's chicken. Place here called Lowe's, and I was like, "This is straight trash. We can't." I told let's don't do this anymore. Bojangles is a home run.
That's a home run every single time. Every time I come home, I'm rolling out there. All right. So you mentioned a little bit about where you're from. You actually ended up going to Tennessee State University and play golf there. Talk a little bit about the decision to go to an HBCU.
Well, it's interesting. My goal was to try to do something different, and by the time I graduated, I had a lot of different offers to go to school to play golf, and Tennessee State was the farthest away from Winston-Salem. So I was like, hey, let me go roll less travel. And so I went to TSU. I tell you, for a collegiate decision, it's the best decision I ever made. It was an unbelievable experience. I met some incredible people that I'm still, really, really close to this day. I respected my professors. It was just holistically, it was a great experience.
And how did you know while you were playing and while you were going that you wanted to go into coaching, or is that something that came along a little bit later?
No, I never wanted to coach. I mean, my goal in school, I wanted to play. I wanted to play pro. And it's funny, when I graduated, I got hired on at Golf Digest, and I went up and played like the week before, played with a couple guys who were aspiring minute tour players. And I've been a pretty good college player, but then you play with these guys and you realize, like, you know what? You can go this road and try to make it. No guarantee you're going to be sleeping in your car, eating 10-cent meals, trying to just save your money and make it. Or you think you could probably have a bigger impact on the world by going a different route, by working with kids. So it's funny what ended up happening. One of my first assignments, editor came up to me and said, hey, I want you to talk to a kid in California. He's 5 years younger than you, kid named Eldrick, and he's a good player. So I'd never heard the guy, and called him up. He's 16. I talked to his dad first, and he says, hey, my son is going to change the world. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. That's what we all say. And then I talked to him, and he reiterated the same thing. And when I got off of the phone, I called my buddies back in Carolina. I was like, yo, I just talked to this kid. He told me he's going to change the world. I said, I just played college golf. I know how hard college golf is because these guys are so good. And I'm telling you right now, to this day, there's a old man who lives up the street from my parents. And the last time I saw this old man, he walked down the street. He looked at me, he said, I guess that young guy got the last laugh, didn't he? I said, that young guy is the best player that ever lived. So, it was an amazing experience. So I figured I would have a greater impact working with young people. And I felt like that was really what was needed more than more Black pro golfers, honestly.
That's a hell of a Tiger Woods story, man. Like, I mean, like that's pretty great that you got a chance to. I mean, you talk about getting a chance to be on the ground floor and knowing a little bit about him before he ultimately ends up blowing up for Stanford and then obviously on the tour.
Oh yeah,
you've had a lot of success as a coach.
Yeah.
You're an assistant coach. Mentioned Stanford. You're assistant coach at their national championship team. A head coach at Michigan State, as well as Queens University of Charlotte, two-time Coach of the Year at Michigan State, Big Ten, multiple Big Ten titles. Is there anything that's special that you feel like you bring, if it's because of your past as a player or just as who you've grown to be, like the connections that you make with the players? What do you attribute so much of your success to?
Well, I tell you, I'll say I'm only as good as my players. I give the players all the credit. I've been extremely blessed to have been able to follow a career and a passion is something that I love, really, really love to do. And so at each of those places, I just basically poured myself into it. And I think one of my gifts actually is being able to communicate with young people. I really do think I've been blessed with a gift of speaking their language, trying to really squeeze the most water out of that towel. And I've been pretty fortunate in that. And yet I brought that same philosophy to Howard, and we've been able to do the same thing. And I told somebody once, I said, they said, well, Sam, you've been successful. I said, yeah, I've been lucky. They said, well, when you're lucky, you don't win 8 rings. I had 8 rings.
I was about to say that's a whole bunch of winning, man. That's a whole bunch of luck. But I tell them all the time, I said, I feel like I am lucky because one thing I learned, I sat in the office one day of Bill Walsh, who used to coach the 49ers. And Coach Walsh said, I said, Coach, I said, I really think that
you're probably the best football coach ever lived. NFL, you're the best NFL coach of all time. I said, you had Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and I started going down this list of great players. He sat back and he laughed in his chair and he said, Coach, I appreciate you saying that. He said, but I want you to remember one thing. I said, what's that? He said, I'm the same guy who used to coach the Bengals. And they were awful. And he said, you're only as good as your players. Now, you got to realize I was a brand new coach when I heard that. I mean, I was a first-year assistant coach when I heard this, when he said that to me. And I walked out of his office that day and I said, that tells the man in the mirror, you are not as important as. You need to grind. You need to be invisible. You need to make sure you work as hard as you can and recruit the best players you can find. You don't sleep on the job. And if you find the best players, you become a better coach. Wow. That's my game plan.
That's a ton of humility for I mean, obviously for Coach Wallace, but that's also for you after you've had so much success. I want to talk to you a little bit about, before I get into your time at Howard, you're the first African-American golf head coach at a Power 5 institution. Right. When you went to Michigan State. Right. I mean, please talk to me a little bit about some of the things that maybe you encountered or any pressure that you felt, because that makes you a trailblazer, and that puts a lot of weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, you go across you go across a few paths where you catch a few N-words, your way, and you get some phone calls on your answering machine that, well, if I could say on it, I won't say, but on this cast with you right now, you get some phone calls and voicemails that you're afraid to let your family listen to. I've gotten some of those, but to me, I mean, God leads my life and my faith is heavy. And I'm like, as long as I'm doing the right thing, I will always run up against viral opposition, because those people don't know me. They only know of me through what they've read, what they see. So at that point, I said, you know what, that means I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And so it's been a blessing. I mean, I tell you, I'm still uber close with my Stanford family, and I'm still close with some of my MSU family. And I tell you what, it's one of those things you realize that your walk and your work won't be easy and won't be unnoticed when you're doing what you're supposed to do. And that's how I've always taken it. So yeah, it was a lot of pressure. I'm not gonna lie. And I did it because, what's funny? I try to be as selfless as possible. I was happy to be the first coach only because I was hoping more would come after me. And now we're in 2022. So this is what, 15 years later. And there hadn't been another Black Power 5 head coach. And so that's the only disappointment to me. You've had a couple guys get a chance at other solid mid-major schools, but no Power 5 schools. And so to me, that's been the largest disappointment. But at the same time, it has allowed me an opportunity. I've helped a lot of coaches that have come along. So a lot of guys that are coaching today, I played a part when they first got into it. They called me. I spent time with them. I opened up my book, shared all the secrets I had, because to me, there are really no secrets. I shared everything I knew with them. And these folks have gone on to become successful coaches. So at the end of the day, I just want God to say, hey, son, job well done. Because I've tried to help as many people as I could help.
What do you attribute the dearth of Black head coaches at these Power 5 institutions to? Is it just a larger kind of, because there's still gatekeeping, we talked about Tiger earlier on in the pod, but like there's still a ton of gatekeeping when it comes to golf, be it financial or be it social, keeping Black people out of it. So do you attribute the lack of head coaching to that, or is this something a little bit bigger?
Yeah, I think it's larger, actually. I don't think in many instances, I don't think there's any incredible intent to keep us out. Not at the end of the day. I think we don't have the numbers. So we've never flooded the market with 50 qualified Black guys that can coach at that level. There are only a few. So when you have a few, and then those few are trying for, I'm just making this up, trying for another job where you have 30 other, 40 other, 50 other people applying for, the numbers just don't weigh in our favor. Mm-hmm. So when you have it that way, it makes it difficult on one end. The second end, it makes it difficult when largely at the schools you're talking about, your donor basis for the golf programs, there are no minorities in the donor basis.
Wow.
So the donors are going after folks that they know, like, and understand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not in that circle. So the first person they're not going to call some random guy they don't know.
Right.
I mean, that's just unfortunate. That's just how it is. In order to really change that schematic, we need to flood the market with more qualified minority players who will then flood the market with more qualified minority coaches. And at that point, then the numbers will increase and we'll get more opportunities, hopefully, at the big schools.
So it's more of a pool problem, just not having a large enough pool to draw from.
Yeah, I
Did
think
you probably attribute that?
Yeah, I think I attribute all of it, but I think that's a large piece of it as well.
I want to talk about, you're hired on April 9th, 2020 to be a director of golf at Howard University.
Okay.
And to say that there were some interesting times would be probably a vast understatement. You're dealing with a new program that is still in its infancy because of thanks in large part to the donation of Steph Curry to fund the program, but also you're dealing with a pandemic that is kind of reaching its height at that moment. Just talk to me a little bit about what it's like to try to build a program in one of the oddest times I think at least in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's the oddest time of my lifetime too, to be honest with you. It was kind of weird. And it was tough at the same time. So I'll say that to say, because you got to think about it. The NCAA instituted a rule during COVID where you couldn't get on the road and recruit. So now all of a sudden, you're having to evaluate, for a lot of coaches, they've never even evaluated video. So now all of a sudden you're evaluating golf swings via video. So again, I attribute it to what helped me out is that I feel like I communicate well. So communicate when young people, when you can't see them, is one of my strengths. Some coaches, I think they're better when you're there in person. They can watch you, they can get to know you that way. Some people don't communicate well via other norms. And it kind of strapped a few programs. I think in my case, it was okay because I was able to communicate, text, email, Zoom, Teams, and talk to a student and get a chance to really be, with a journalistic background, I was able to pull certain things out, ask certain questions, leading questions, trying to get the answers I was looking for to see who I was really dealing with. Because you can fake it through one encounter, you can fake it. Through 25 encounters via conversation, Zoom, what have you, you can't fake it. It's impossible. Because the truth will come out eventually. So once you really get to know that person, at that point, it was pretty easy. So it was tough. I mean, because at the same time, setting it up at Howard, I had to find courses to practice, had to raise money, Steph's money, Steph's money is great money, but it doesn't make us whole. So I still have to raise money. So each year I have to raise 200 grand to be whole. So I don't have, also starting at Howard, I didn't have a donor base. Think about it. There were no golf donors.
Right.
So now you're going to brand new people like, hey, we're creating a golf team. And I'll never forget, and I won't say the guy's name. I ran into a guy at a country club in Maryland, and he was with 3 or 4 of his buddies, and they were really well off African-American guys. And he said, well, I understand you want some money and you're doing this, but I don't want to get a program, no money. How do you know you can even win? You don't have a team, you put it in. I looked at this guy, I said, let me tell you something. I said, my name is Sam Puryear. Everywhere I've been, I won. For me to sit here in front of you and tell you right now that I'm not going to win is sacrilegious. I said, I'm going to win at Howard, and I'm going to win in the first 3 years. I said, I promise you that. I said, and if you give me the money I'm asking for from you right now, I'll win even sooner. So are you going to help me or prevent me? The guy said, he sat back, he was an older guy, he sat back in his chair, he said, okay, I'm going to give you the money. Well, now I'm fast forward 2 years later, not even 3, we've already won. So his money was not only was it well appreciated, but his money was well spent. So
I love that story. I mean, that's a fantastic story. You mentioned some of the success you all have already had. I want to talk about one player in particular, Gregory Odom Jr.
Yep.
He made his PGA Tour debut at the Wells Fargo at a Wells Fargo event, and Wells Fargo has given a lot of money to United Negro College Fund, Thurgood Marshall. Just could you tell me about a little bit about what that kind of what him participating does for the program, and any advice maybe you gave him before he teed off?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the advice I told him before he ever came to Howard. I said, if you trust me, I'll help get you opportunities that you never get anywhere else. I said, and if you listen and follow the process, you will be a 10 times better golfer at the end of your journey than you were at the beginning. And the Wells Fargo cemented what I told him. His participation on the team, winning the PGA Works PWCC Championship, Minority Championship twice, winning the MEAC Championship, even today in playing in the Dogwood Amateur, which is one of the top amateur events in the country, he shot 500 a day, shot 67.
Woo!
So a lot of players from Southern Cal, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, he beat all those kids today. You know, here's a couple more days to play, but it just showed you that the kid can play. Mm-hmm. Greg to me is a wonderful example of a diamond in the rough, where you go out and find these kids and you help. He already had the belief he was good, but you reinsert and reiterate that you can be even better if you do A, B, C, and D, and you put those things around him that are going to help him get better. And so with Greg's participation in Wells Fargo elevated what we were trying to do here at Howard, but it also elevated him personally to get closer to his end goal, which is to play on a PGA Tour one day.
Talk to me a little bit about the Charlie Sifford Centennial Cup that's coming up. I believe it's the inaugural of that cup with other HBCUs participating.
Yes, August 27th through the 29th, 2022 is based on the top 4 Division I teams that are HBCU and the top 2 Division II teams that are HBCU. And we're the #1 HBCU program through Gobstat ranking. And for me, it's pretty special because I had a lot of interviews and a lot of time spent with Mr. Sifford before he passed away. And I know what he stood for. He stood for equity. He stood for change. He stood for opportunity. And for me, that was huge because now I'm looking at what it's doing for these players. It's putting them on a national stage. It's giving them the opportunity to compete and people to get to see what they can do. So for me, and it's in Charlotte, and Mr. Sifford lived in Charlotte. They even have a course named after him there in Charlotte. I mean, so for me, it's a home run.
You mentioned and I'll get you out of here on this, but you mentioned the importance of donation, about building that donor base because the program is still in its infancy.
Sure.
I want to go ahead and shout out one of the social medias of the Bison of the Howard team is HU Bison _golf. That's for Instagram and Twitter. And then also I want to give people your email address in case they're interested in donating to the golf program. It's
sure.
Samuel.Puryear, that's Puryear at howard.edu, correct?
Absolutely.
And then they can reach out to you personally as well via phone is 517-243-0696.
Absolutely. That's perfect.
Thank you for your time. As always, you all, he mentioned the importance of donating, and I can't express it any better than that. Give a little, get a lot back. Go to bisonexpress.org /give. Give to all of our athletic programs. Contact Coach Puryear. Give to a golf program. You see what he's done. You see what he's done in a short period of time. He's going to do more if you help him out more. Thank you so much, Coach. You were fantastic, and I look forward to getting a chance to speak with you a little bit more in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. I love Bison Express. I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. I think people need to get on board, support Bison Express, because at the end of the day, all these students need help in allowing their dreams to come true. And it may seem minuscule to say I can only give $250, but I'm telling you, every dollar has a face. And so please consider giving, and we really appreciate it because the money is well spent. And I promise you, you're changing and affecting lives from there and forever.
And it's in good hands with people like you. Thank you so much, Coach. I look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you.